basically what today is, and most of you took the course, we were doing a focus group for Dr. Kavin's first part of his course that's going to go out to, I would say we're probably going to be hitting millions of people. And you're kind of the first line, and hearing your feedback was very helpful. And we wanted to do something special and have a private event tonight where Dr. Kavin will go a little bit deeper into the 7 paradigms and talk a little bit more about the course and hear some more of your feedback, and also get your testimonials, which is also very helpful, and we do appreciate it. So, and we also have some speakers tonight to talk about how Dr. Kavin's course helps with their work and day-to-day life. So, without further ado, Dr. Kavin.
Yep. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. He's taking pictures. Yeah. And sorry about that. Yeah. You get to do stand it now. Yeah.
Right. So, Doc.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. This is you're part of a very special group of people, and as you know, with the launch of the book Primal Health Design, we just didn't want to stop there, but we wanted to make the content really available to people in a way that it's a more of a masterclass style where people can engage kind of one-on-one with the message I'm giving. And so we developed the Primal Reset program, which is a 21 session masterclass, going through the 7 different paradigms with 3 days, 3 sessions associated with each. And people have really resonated with the content. I hope you guys had a good time enjoying the content. Okay. And that was just a sampler because you probably got 7 sessions, access to 7 sessions, but the whole program is 21. We didn't want to be too much of a heavy lift for everybody. Otherwise, everybody would be like, no, we don't want to do it. So, but what I wanted to bring you guys here today was, one, to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. We will try to get few words from you in terms of a short interview. Anything you want to say, anything, any even constructive criticism for us is fine as well. I welcome that. Okay, it's so that you can guide us as we kind of deploy this product out. Okay, but what I also want to share with you is where we're going from here, and what the vision looks like in the next year and moving forward. And we picked people from all different industries, and so you'll see a sampling as we'll have a few people speak, and you'll see what industries we are getting into, and you'll see the vision of what we're working on. Okay, but before I do that, I wanted to give you a snapshot of why we're doing this in the first place. What is the transformation that we're looking to create in people, or what's the gap? Okay, and let me just start with that here. We as we were branding this, and we were working with Peter's team and everything like that, and we just put our heads down. We said, what is the real issue that we're trying? What is the real gap out there that we want to fill, right? And from my perspective, and I'm sure you guys agree, right? I did a event for my good friends over there recently at a youth event, and the first question I asked is like that. Think of your best friend right now. Everybody, think of your best friend, right? Yeah. How many can say their number? How many can say their phone number offhand? Like, can you give me their phone number? So let's see if I got 1, 2, 3, right? 3 in a group of, right? So in a way, we have empowered technology, right? But we have disempowered our humanity. You guys agree, right? Because something that the ability to remember numbers, to ability to find directions and have that sense of presence when you're on the road, right? How many of you agree that we're sort of losing that with technology, right? Yeah, and so what I start seeing and as I, in my work as a radiologist, and most of you know I'm a neuroradiologist. I specialize in brain and spine, and we see all sorts of pathology in terms of people forgetting things. People come to us for Alzheimer's disease, where we have 40, 50-year-old women who start forgetting their keys and things like that, and they think they have early form of Alzheimer's. They come to us, we do imaging, and then we try to see if they have, and you could see the degradation that is happening in society, right? And I am in the forefront of it, okay? But not just degradation in terms of mental capacity, the physical capacity, the body, breaking down from all the sitting or the engagement with technology. We see, I do all these scans for people with neck pain. And these are young professionals, because all day they're sitting in front of a laptop or they're looking at their phone. And so you got that forward head posture, and you can see how the spine is actually changing. So you're changing your body, you're molding your body to conform to technology in a way. Think about it, okay? And to me, that's the big rift. That's the gap, right? As we engage AI, as we engage technology, we're degrading who we are as a human, I don't think that should be the case. I don't think we should lose humanity for the sake of embracing technology. And I'm all for embracing technology. I mean, we have people here from the AI world, and we love that. I attend all the events. We, where I am, St. Luke's Hospital, we test AI products all the time for different companies. In fact, we're testing about 30 different AI products as it relates to radiology. We're detecting strokes, we're detecting aneurysms, we're detecting all these things, and I'm all for it. But what I'm not for is that we lose the humanity as we embrace technology, okay? And so what I started seeing is, I said, what is it that, if we're going to decrease this gap or empower humanity at the same time, what is it that we want to uplift in humanity, so that we can keep up with technology but then maintain humanity at the same time? Am I making sense? So that's my primal driver, I guess. Right? And so hence we said that the main goal here is to connect with your primal intelligence, okay? Because I believe that one of the most interesting thing I've seen is people say, oh, our body at 40, things start changing, your hormones start going down, your body starts going, you start developing these problems. There's this list of problems that people see in their 40s and list of seeing in the 50s. But what's the fascinating thing is that when you look at a lot of these problems and you look at the drivers, right? The drivers, I tell people, I did a recent podcast, right? And I told the podcaster asked me this question. It's like, what is your main message? And here's my main message. I told him, I said, is that you are in the cockpit of your genome. Think about it, right? You have a genome, right? You have your genes that are expressing different things in your body and everything like that, right? There's genes for health. There's genes that create cancer. There are genes that strengthen your bones. Genes do everything, right? If you understand that you're in the cockpit and you have all these switches you can flip on, okay? And I said that for the past 25 years, I've tried to look at all the switches we can turn on. Now, there are good switches and bad switches, but I found 7 master switches that you can flip on in a positive way that will impact your life positively. Hence the book, Primal Health Designer, 7 Key Paradigms, okay? And so we have this primal intelligence within us, which if we operate and we work with it, we're able to drive our health in a miraculous way, okay? Before I go to the next, I'll share you this one story. So on the past podcast, I shared this. There were these 2 women. They were born with a very strong family history of Alzheimer's. So they have this particular gene, right, which gives them an early form of Alzheimer's. And so if you have that gene, that Alzheimer's kicks in usually around between 50 and 60. So, or, like that, the Alzheimer kicks in. But now here's what happened. They're the set of twins, right? Both have the same DNA, right? Twin A decided that this is my fate. This is what it is. This is my genetics. If I'm going to get Alzheimer's, I'll get Alzheimer's. Kind of went with the flow, right? Twin B said, you know what? I'm going to do everything in my power to in terms of my lifestyle to work against this genetics. Okay, I cannot change the genetics, but I have whatever I have in my control. So Twin B just went all out. Just moved to an area where there's just clean air, being in outdoors. Just food, everything like that. Twin A developed Alzheimer's at 62. Twin B developed Alzheimer's at 83. When we say clinical Alzheimer's, okay? Same genetics, okay? So what that is, the term for that is called genetic, called a genetic rift, okay? Is that when you have the same genetics, but the way you operate your life impacts how that plays out, okay? So that's what I want to share with you. And what's exciting that as we roll out this material, both in terms of the youth and business and everything like that, what we started seeing is that it's not just about health, but it's about the qualities we carry, okay? And so what I wound up doing is that I feel that there are four, and I covered this in the talk we did over there. There are four primal qualities that we can enhance, okay? And so I'm going to give you an essence of that today, not the full talk, but an essence of that, and that will really segue into what some of the other people are going to mention. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay. So let's advance here. Okay. Keep going. Okay. All right. Yep, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. So one of the things is people ask this, how do I know when I incorporate these practices, how do I know things are changing in my body? Okay. And so we started looking into it, like in the research, like when you start engaging with earth, when we say earth is like obviously, grounding practices, having contact with soil, what does that, does that even do anything to you? What we found is that when kids play in the dirt, they have less allergies later on in their life. When kids play in the dirt, their cuts heal faster. Okay. When adults play in the dirt, their wounds heal faster. And why? Because it impacts all sorts of inflammatory markers. Okay, I'm going to send you all a PDF of this, so you have this. I'm not going to get into the detail, but it improves your mitochondrial health. It improves the inflammatory health, circadian rhythms, the way your hormones operate, the way you connect with the circadian rhythm in the rise and fall of the sun and the nights and whatnot, impacts your hormone performance. So males, if people start taking low T when you're in the 40s and things like that, that could be, but the primary issue for most males in their 40s is not low T, is actually circadian malalignment that we've seen, okay, which is throws off their hormone profile, okay. So next one. So and we move into body, connecting with the body. We've seen like posture, how posture changes so many other parameters, biomarkers, okay? So muscle health, metabolic health, cardiovascular fitness. We know that if you raise your VO2 max, okay, and I talk about it in the book, How to Raise Your VO2 Max, that's the strongest predictor of your longevity, okay? Apart from having a social structure and a strong social connections, that apart from that, your VO2 max is your strongest predictor of how long you'll live. That one thing, okay? So what we found is that once we start, I wish I knew this when I was 12, don't you think? Like they would have said, hey, because I had great VO2 max there, and I think I still have pretty good VO2 max now, but it was better when I was 12, next slide. So things in the body, right? Things in the food. We know that what you eat impacts like a lipid profile, glucose metabolism, but interesting, it impacts how your genes get expressed, okay? And so here's the thing. If you're, let's say, I take somebody who's vitamin D deficient and I start giving him vitamin D, okay? It impacts about 200 genes in an instant. 200 genes start expressing themselves differently just because I take the guy from vitamin D deficiency to that. About 40 to 50% of the people are vitamin D deficient, okay, when you do the labs. And the lab tests go from if you look at the range, it goes from like 30 to 100, okay? And you actually want what the changes in your DNA occur when your vitamin D is on the upper end of that spectrum. So even sometimes their doctor will say, oh, your labs are okay, but you may be like 35, you may be on the lower end of the spectrum and still not getting the benefits of what we're talking about, okay? So just to give you an idea how all of this plays into your life, like that. Next one. The other thing, so when we take those three first paradigms, connecting with earth, body, and food, okay, what I've noticed is that forms the foundation of what I call is like your personal power in a sense, okay, which is one human quality that AI cannot replicate. It's like when somebody walks in, you can just from 4 seconds, you know if they have that primal quality in them, right? Like if you ever, anybody work on a farm? Anybody work on a farm when they were young, right? Yeah, right. You ever see farmers, the people who are around a lot of land, open air and all that, they have a presence, right? They have that like real primal quality. When you meet a farmer or somebody, it's a very primal presence, right? And what we're seeing is that people are lacking in that primal power, okay? Which has a lot to do with how you hold your body, how your level of inflammation is, and everything else we could talk about. So it's a quality that we miss out on that AI cannot give us. So the second piece, you can stay there. The second piece is we talk about primal power. The second piece is presence, and I talked about this a little bit, okay? And it's funny because whenever I look at somebody, you look at somebody's eyes, you can know if they're present, if they're with you or not. How many of you know that, right? Yeah, get 3 seconds. It takes, right? Dom, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I'm sorry, I wasn't there.
Yeah. Right. So yeah. But in a split second, you know if that person is with you or not, right? But that ability to be here, it is a rare entity nowadays, right? And one of the things driving that, okay, and I did a recent article on this, is that we get interrupted with our phone about 96 to 120 times a day, if you think about it. Like I think the average is around like 98 times or something like that, And think about it. Anytime you get interrupted, for you to enter a space of presence, it takes another 20 minutes, okay, before you can enter that presence, okay? Because you need focused attention for 20 minutes to be present, okay? And that's what the neuroscience says. So what we're finding is how does this play out in business? In business, you see people who are at work but not engaged, right? You see corporate, the biggest issue is lack of engagement because they just cannot be present. They just cannot get into that space. So in corporate, we work on people getting into that state of flow, that state of deep work. How many have heard the term deep work, okay? Deep work comes when you have 20 minutes of focused attention, and then that drops you into a space where you can have deep work, and then you can stay there for hours because now you're in the flow. Okay, that's where creativity comes from. That's where inspiration comes from. That's where you come up with ideas. So if you see all these big companies, Google, Microsoft, all of that, they're creating mechanisms of where they can have their employees experience deep work because those are the innovators. So you put them in a room apart from technology and almost have like a think tank where they can have that inspiration, right? But the thing is that in our education system, how many times that they even teach you to experience deep work, right? How many times, right? They tell you to do this, they pay attention, do this, but how many times do you actually, where a kid goes, wow, that's amazing, right? So that's one of my work is one of the things we're working on is developing a methodology where we take middle schoolers and high schoolers through a process where we go from anxiety to attention to awareness, where there's deep work, where they can feel that presence, and then they can actually get deep into it, where they can come up with ideas, okay? And it's a process. So personal power, presence, okay? Next one, okay? The next one is an idea of what I see is that right now, people live in a world where you try to conform to societal expectations a lot. You say, Peter says, this is a good career for me, so I go for it, right? I start a job, now I'm there 5 years, 10 years, I get comfortable with the job. But I never asked myself, now I'm like 15 years at a job that I got through a friend, and then I never asked myself, was I actually built for that job? Like, am I using my core qualities for that job, right? I may be comfortable at it, I may be good at it, right? But am I using my natural qualities? Okay, and it's interesting because we have Rajesh here. He studies ancient Indian scriptures, and he's phenomenal. He's written multiple books and everything, and he's just like I mean, if you ask him about that aspect, he can take you so deep. It's incredible. Okay, so one of the things we take Indian philosophy and bring that, they say that all of us, if we split people into groups, all of us have one dominant strength. Okay, some of us are what we call they're doers. To make it simple, we want to do things, we want to create things. We know like that we're doers. Those are the artists. They want to make and create and build and think. Then some of us are thinkers, right? They're idea people. They want to solve things. They want to come up with ideas. Then we have connectors. They have a very high EQ. And then the last, we have a group that are more predominantly seekers. So seekers are people that seek a higher connection. They feel like they want to answer bigger questions. Why are we here? These are the people who kind of go into clergy and things like that, right? So we always had in our philosophy, we always had people with their dominant strengths, and they would go into fields that made that dominant quality blossom, right? And what we see is that how many times do you ask yourself that what is in me? What is that dominant quality of me? Are you a connector that's working on Wall Street and where you're just punching numbers, where you should have been really like that connector and doing that? Or you understand what I'm saying? So we have the biggest issue in terms of why is this important? Because we found that when people are misaligned at work, they have a chronic level of stress. When you have a chronic level of stress, you shorten your telomeres. Okay, it's a particular telomeres are your end caps of your chromosomes. When you shorten your telomeres, you live less. Okay, so your misalignment actually shortens your lifespan. Am I making sense here? Okay, and people don't realize that I am not playing out my game that I was built for, right? I'm not even playing the game I was built for. I'm just playing somebody else's game, okay? And that's a big thing we're seeing, that people have never asked themselves that what is that quality in them, And so one of the things that we're working on the youth program is that we put a youth through a questionnaire, and we try to identify that quality. Not to say, hey, you're only a connector, so you cannot be a thinker and like that. We're saying connection is your primary quality, but then be a connector. So be in a role where you're like the forward-facing guy. You want to make this guy the forward-facing guy, and he can do all the other things, but that's his dominant quality. You want to leverage that, right? So then we identify that in these teens and then these high schoolers, and then give them tools to how to explore that. And then I say, if you're a strong connector, where you're good with working with people, explore internships where you can connect with people. And what we'll start seeing is when people will notice that alignment, they will blossom in that space. You guys with me? Okay. And I never had that done. How many of you ever had that type of assessment done? Anybody? You had that assessment done? Great. Okay. I never did. Okay. And so I'm more of a thinker, I guess, and slowly it's funny because my role slowly evolved. I started off as a radiologist because I thought it was, I was good visual. I started off radiologist, became a partner in a group, became a VP in the group, and then they wanted to push me, further in leadership. And then I had to ask myself, I said, what is it that I really like to do, And I was more of somebody who can take complex ideas and make it simple. I was like that, more of a thinker and like that. So I actually gave up my VP position to go into a teaching role because I knew that I didn't want to be a VP and just take people's complaints and hire and fire people. It's good, it's great, but I said like I said that do I want to do that for my whole life, right? Or do I want to teach? Because to me, raising the next generation of doctors, in a way that I can teach them, I can influence them. These are the doctors that are going to go out and do things. To me, that is, that's so much more impactful, right? Rather than being on this side. So it took me some time to find the purpose. Next one. And one of the things we've seen that as soon as people, we always say, how many you tell your kids that you got to have the right group you hang out with, right? It's very important you find out the right group, okay? But the main important thing we are seeing is that unless you know yourself and what your strengths are, you will never find the right group because you'll never know where you fit in, okay? And what we started seeing is that when people realize that, let's say I am a connector, right? I'm somebody very social. I'm good in that space where we talk and we engage and do like that. When you put a connector with a connector, they gel, and that peer group becomes much more powerful than if I put a connector with a bunch of thinkers, okay? Because the thinkers are thinking of all these ideas where this guy is like all about EQ, and these guys are all about IQ. You know what I'm saying? All right? And so you have this mismatch where this guy doesn't fit in, right? So the thing is, as soon as you identify that primal quality, that peer group is a secondary adjunct that automatically develops from it, okay? So the third P is I would say that purpose and that peer group that comes from it, okay? And the last one, okay, we'll go from, and I'll as we wrap up here. And the last thing is this, okay? And I was having this conversation with somebody, and then they said that, you know, uh, they said like, how do you view your work when you go out and work every day and to work? Like, how do you view your work? And I said, honestly, it's changed, okay? Initially, when I started my practice, it was all about making the most amount of money in as little time as possible. And I said, I want to get the best salary and work as little as possible. That's the goal, right? What's my highest return on investment? And yes, there was that financial goal to buy a house and do everything like that, and that's where you started off with. But later on, it became about prestige, right? Like it became about like, having that title, having that that influence and everything like that. And you can ride that wave for a while, okay? But I would say if you don't go to the third stage, okay, and that's what we're talking about here, is at the last stage, you got to say that when I started viewing myself more as a medium, right? Rather than it being more about me, but rather than me being a vehicle for something, and then things change. Because when you're chasing just the dollar, or you're chasing the title, right? It only takes you so far because there's no title big enough that will satisfy you, or there's no dollar amount that will satisfy you. But when you see yourself as a medium, okay, and that's what I had to kind of graduate into, right? And I said, I am a medium, and if I can use this as a medium to improve youth or improve corporate, right, like that, and just put that thought process out there through a team, through people, then it's a ever new joy. You know what I'm saying? It never gets old, right? You constantly engage with that. It totally transforms how you view life, And so what we've seen is that when people have that last P, and I talk about the last P is permanence, okay? When I say that when you know that you have a impermanent life, you will chase things that are going to live after you. You'll chase permanence, right? It's like when you think that you have a endless tomorrows, you'll sit there and doom scroll and watch Netflix and and all that, because there's always tomorrow, right? Right? What's the big deal, right? I can do that tomorrow. But when you realize that you are impermanent, then you're going to say, well, what am I leaving behind? What's my impact, right? We had a business leader. You always used to say, how many people are better off because I lived, right? And that's when you start asking yourself this question, then you say, what is the permanence that I'm leaving behind? And when you operate life through that lens, what we've seen that when people develop that lens of permanence, many different things start changing in your body. Okay, we talk about stress levels going out. My resting heart rate went down. The way I slept went down. And we talk about different things in terms of younger genes turning on in your body just because you have that. And the reason is, and I'll end with this. And I had this conversation with Dom. Okay, and I said, below every fear, if you look at every fear, some people have fear of public speaking, fear of heights. Behind every fear, the main fear is death. You guys agree? Right? Behind every fear, if you go down, 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 what are you afraid of? What are you afraid? And you'll say, oh, okay, I'm afraid of that I'll die, right? You say, I'm afraid of I won't find a job. Why? Oh, because I won't be able to afford food. Why? Because then I'll starve to death and I'll die. Okay, then it goes, okay, you're a fear of death, right? So ultimately, every fear is a fear of death, right? But when you embrace that, when you say that, yes, I understand there is impermanence there, then all of a sudden your body becomes comfortable with that concept of impermanence, and then you can embrace permanence. Am I making sense here? Okay. You see things start rewiring in your body when that changes. Okay. So those are the 4 P's, which I think AI will never develop. AI will never blossom that within you. Okay. And as we embrace technology, I want us to empower humanity at even a faster rate, okay? Because we want to raise a humanity that's even better than it is right now, okay? And that's the goal. And we want to do it at different levels. So what I wanted to have you guys experience is the outreach and the stuff that we're doing, and give you a glimpse of what's to come.